Once upon a time, there lived a man named Pastor Chukwudi in a small village called Obinzi. He was well loved and respected by everyone. Pastor Chukwudi had a church where people came to worship God. He always preached about love, kindness, and faith. Everyone trusted him because he had helped many people solve their problems. Pastor Chukwudi had a beautiful wife, Neka, and together they had one child, a little girl named Ada. Ada was the light of their lives, always running around with a smile, making everyone in the village happy. She was 13 years old and had big bright eyes that sparkled with joy. But Pastor Chukwudi had a secret. Deep inside his heart, he wasn't satisfied with his life. He wanted more power, more fame, and more followers in his church. He wanted to be the greatest pastor in the whole country. One night, after everyone had gone to sleep, Pastor Chukwudi sat in his small quiet room, thinking about how he could get more power. He prayed to God, but deep inside, he was not sure if God was listening. Late at night, there was a knock at Pastor Chukwidi's door. He was surprised because no one ever visited at such a late time. When he opened the door, he saw a tall dark man dressed in a long flowing robe. The man's eyes glowed red and his voice was deep and smooth. "Pastor Chukwudi," the man said, "I know what you want. You want more power, you want your church to grow, and you want to be rich and famous." Pastor Chukwudi was shocked. How did this man know his deepest desires? He didn't say anything, but his heart beat faster. "I can give you all the power you want," the man continued, "but it will come with a price." Pastor Chukwudi felt a chill down his spine. "What kind of price?" he asked. The man smiled, showing sharp teeth. "You must sacrifice something very precious to you, something you love more than anything else in this world." Pastor Chukwudi didn't understand. "What do you mean?" The man's red eyes glowed even brighter. "You must sacrifice your only child." Pastor Chukwidi's heart sank. Sacrifice Ada, his sweet innocent daughter? How could he even think about it? "No, I cannot do that," he said, shaking his head. "I love her. She's my only child." The man's smile faded. His voice became colder. "If you want power, you must pay the price. Think about it, Pastor Chukwudi. I will return in 3 days for your answer." With that, the mysterious man vanished into the night, leaving Pastor Chukwudi trembling. For the next 3 days, Pastor Chukwudi couldn't sleep or eat. The thought of sacrificing Ada haunted him, but at the same time the desire for power burned in his heart. He imagined having a big church, lots of money, and people from all over the world coming to listen to him preach. Neka, his wife, noticed that something was wrong. "Chukwudi, are you okay? You've been quiet lately," she asked. Pastor Chukwudi forced a smile. "I am fine," he lied, just thinking about the church. But deep down, he was battling a terrible decision. How could he choose between his daughter and the power he craved? The tall man with the glowing red eyes returned to Pastor Chukwidi's house, just as he had promised. His presence filled the room in silence. Pastor Chukwidi's heart pounded in his chest as he stood before the man. "Have you made your decision?" the man asked, his voice smooth and cold. Pastor Chukwudi was torn. He thought about Ada, her bright smile, and the way she ran into his arms every evening. But then, images of fame and wealth filled his mind. He imagined a church so big that people would come from afar and wide to see him. He saw himself wearing expensive suits, driving fancy cars, and living in a big house. But at what cost? "I can't do it," Pastor Chukwudi whispered, his voice shaky. The man's eyes narrowed. "You desire power, Pastor Chukwudi. You cannot have power without sacrifice, remember. You only have one chance." The pastor closed his eyes, tears streaming down his face. "Please, give me more time." The man shook his head slowly. "You already have had 3 days. If you do not sacrifice now, you'll lose this chance forever. Pastor Chikwedi looked at the ground. The weight of his decision pressed on him. And with one final broken breath, he whispered, "I will do it." Pastor Chikwedi could hardly believe the words that had just left his mouth. He had agreed to sacrifice his daughter, his precious Ada. That night after Neka and Ada had fell asleep, Pastor Chikwedi sneaked out of bed. His heart felt heavy, and every step he took felt like walking with a mountain on his back. He went to Ada's room and stood by her bed, watching her sleep. Her face was peaceful, her tiny hands curled up beside her pillow. How could he do this? She was his only child, the light of his life, yet he had already made the choice. The thought of the power he would gain filled his mind again, clouding his love for Ada. Neka woke up suddenly in the middle of the night. She had a strange feeling in her heart, like something was terribly wrong. She turned to find Pastor Chikwedi's side of the bed empty. Panic gripped her chest. Quickly, she got up and ran to Ada's room. To her horror, she found Pastor Chikwedi standing over Ada's bed, his hands trembling. "Chikwedi, what are you doing?" she screamed. Pastor Chikwedi jumped back, startled. "Neka, it's not what it looks like," he stammered. But Neka's sharp eyes caught the strange glow of the red light in the room. She knew something was terribly wrong. She grabbed Ada and held her close, shielding her from Pastor Chikwedi. "Stay away from her," Neka cried. Neka's heart pounded as she held Ada close. "Chikwedi, what is happening? Why are you doing this?" Pastor Chikwedi broke down, falling to his knees. The weight of what he had almost done was too much for him. I wanted power, Neka. I wanted to grow the church to have more than we've ever had. But to do that, I had to sacrifice Ada." Neka's eyes widened in disbelief. "Sacrifice Ada? For power? Are you out of your mind?" Pastor Chikwedi nodded, his face covered in tears. "I am so sorry. I didn't know what to do. The man promised me everything." Neka's heart broke into 1,000 pieces. The man she had loved and trusted, the father of her child, had nearly given up their daughter for power. She held Ada even tighter, her mind racing with fear and anger. Just as Neka was about to speak, the tall man with the glowing red eyes appeared in the room. His presence was even more menacing this time. The air felt thick, and the room darkened as if the very light was being swallowed by the man's power. "You made your choice, Pastor Chikwedi," the man said coldly. "You cannot turn back now." Neka stood in front of Ada, shielding her from the man. "You will not take my daughter," she shouted, her voice filled with rage. The man sneered. "This is not your decision, woman. Pastor Chikwedi made a deal. He must pay the price." But Neka's love for Ada burnt brighter than any deal made in darkness. She faced the man with fire in her eyes. "I will not let you take her." The man laughed. "You think your love can stop me? You are nothing compared to the power I hold." But deep in Neka's heart, she felt a different kind of power, a power stronger than any deal or dark force. The love of a mother for her child. She wasn't going to give up without a fight. Neka held Ada close, her heart racing. She knew the dark man was powerful, but she also knew that love was the most powerful force of all. Tears welled up in her eyes as she whispered, "God help us protect my daughter." Suddenly, a bright light filled the room, pushing back the darkness. The man with the red eyes stepped back, shielding his face from the light. Pastor Chikwedi, still on his knees, looked up in shock. He had never seen anything like this before. The light seemed to come from Neka herself, glowing with the pure, fierce love of a mother. The man snarled, "It isn't over." And with that, he disappeared into the night, leaving the family alone in the glowing light. Pastor Chikwedi collapsed in tears. Ashamed of what he had almost done, Nneka stood over him, still holding Ada tightly. "Chukwudi, how could you?" she whispered, her voice trembling with hurt and anger. Pastor Chukwudi couldn't speak. All he could do was cry, broken by the weight of his guilt. "I will never forgive you if you ever put our child in danger again," Nneka said, her voice firm. "You almost lost everything, Chukwudi. And what of power?" "I am sorry," Pastor Chukwudi whispered, his voice barely audible. "I was wrong. I was wrong." The days that followed were filled with silence and sorrow. Pastor Chukwudi spent hours praying, asking for forgiveness for the terrible thing he had almost done. Nneka kept a close eye on Ada, never letting her out of her sight. She couldn't trust Chukwudi fully, not after what he had almost sacrificed. But deep in her heart, she knew that everyone makes mistakes. She hoped that someday, with time, their family could heal from the dark chapter. Rumors spread quickly through the village about what had happened in Pastor Chukwudi's home. People whispered behind closed doors, shocked that their beloved pastor had nearly sacrificed his daughter. The village elders summoned Pastor Chukwudi and Nneka to a meeting. Everyone wanted answers. Pastor Chukwudi, filled with shame, walked into the meeting with his head bowed. Nneka stood beside him, holding Ada's hand tightly. The elders sat in a circle, their faces serious. "Chukwudi, is it true?" one elder asked. "Did you try to sacrifice your daughter for power?" Pastor Chukwudi nodded slowly. "Yes," he said quickly. "I was tempted by the dark force. I lost my way." The elders murmured among themselves, their eyes filled with disappointment. The villagers who had gathered outside the meeting house were shocked and angry. How could their pastor, a man of God, fall so far? "You have betrayed our trust," another elder said. "You have betrayed your family. How can we allow you to lead us after this?" Pastor Chukwudi didn't have any answer. He knew he had failed. He had let the desire for power cloud his judgment and nearly destroyed his family. All he could do was to ask for forgiveness. "I know I have done wrong," he said, his voice breaking. "I don't deserve your trust anymore, but I will spend the rest of my life trying to make things right." Pastor Chukwudi's confession shocked the village, but what shocked them even more was the deep sorrow in his voice. The man they had once admired was now broken, consumed by guilt. Some villagers felt pity for him, while others couldn't forgive him. For days, Pastor Chukwudi locked himself in his church, fasting and praying. He refused to eat, refused to speak to anyone. Nneka, worried for his health, begged him to come home. "Chukwudi, you can't change what happened by locking yourself away," she said through the locked door. "Come home to us, we need you." But Pastor Chukwudi couldn't face his family, especially not Ada. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her innocent face and remembered how close he had come to losing her forever. Thank you for watching my story about Pastor Chukwudi's attempt of sacrificing his daughter Ada for power and wealth. This has marked the end of part 1 of our story. I kindly request your subscription if you are new on this channel, and also don't forget to click your notification bell so that you'll be notified about all the new stories that I upload. You can also comment and share the videos. See you in